Hi. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm always so excited when this stuff works.
It's true. Technology, but it's keeping us together during this time, which is great. I see that you've been doing I mean, what you do, your work has changed a lot because of this. You're doing a lot of home recording now, right?
Yes. It's they sent us all equipment so that we could record from home. Actually already had pretty good equipment because of the podcast. I co-host a true crime podcast, and it's here the thing so it works because we're an incredibly well-oiled machine, but what you miss is when we record. Ordinarily we actually record all together like an old radio play. Anybody who's in town is expected to be at the studio, and of course what you get from that is, you know, the way you would say a line informs the way I respond to it. So even though I really know the heart and mind of Lisa Simpson extraordinarily well, and I can sort of punt in a vacuum and do lines just wild, it's not my preference.
Yeah. Is it? So I always wondered that. So that's how it is played out, like a radio play. So when you have a guest star on the show, are you in the room with like Lady Gaga or whoever?
She actually came and recorded with us. That was such a thrill. That was amazing.
Wow.
It's nowadays, you know, because technology is so good. If their schedule doesn't permit, if they're like, we just actually did a table read this morning via Zoom. With Stephen Fry, who's going to come on, who's a British actor, who's brilliant, who's going to come on and play a few characters. And he's in England, so of course we won't get to meet him. And nowadays, by and large, I think people they take advantage of the fact that you don't have to be with us. But if you can come, you know, it's sort of like, I wonder sometimes because the guest stars are like, yes, I'd love to do your show. And then 80 people converge on them in the studio, like, just really wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, well, nothing subtle about that.
Do you have a favorite? There's been so many great ones over the years. It's tough to decide, I guess.
It is tough to decide. I really loved meeting Lady Gaga. She was so gracious. She was so game. And humble and lovely. And I always say actually one of the highlights of really my whole career was recording with Dustin Hoffman for Lisa's Substitute, which we did, I think that's season 2. And they actually flew me to New York to record with him. Nowadays, I guarantee you they wouldn't do that. They would just pick him up. Now they might have me in the studio in Los Angeles and he would be in the studio in New York, so at least we could do the scene together. But back then they flew me out, and James L. Brooks, who's our executive producer, directed us. It was a full day record, just him and me, and he was remarkable. I mean, he was generous and thoughtful and fun and funny, and it was so much ad-libbing, of course, which couldn't make it into the episode because we're only a 22-minute show, but that was really a big deal for me.
Wow, it's unbelievable, the legacy of The Simpsons already going into. Congrats on season 32.
Thank you.
Amazing, but yeah, when you know this show is really, there was really no precedent at the time. It was kind of, you know, going off on its own. Did you ever feel that there was a risk involved, that maybe it wasn't going to be what it was? Because at the time we weren't really familiar with it. You know, the sitcom existed, but not in the animated sense, really.
That's true. The scuttlebutt at the time when we aired the first half-hour episode, which was the Christmas special in December 1989, they hadn't had an animated show on in primetime since the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. And Fox was a brand new network. You know, they didn't really have any shows. I was on another show on Fox at the time called Herman's Head also. And everybody was two things. One, this new network will never survive. There are only ever been 3. Screw you, you know, F off, Fox. We do not want you as the new kid on the block. And 2, again, like, you're out of your mind that you're going to put animation on in primetime. It just won't work. I think what they underestimated and what some people don't know is that The Simpsons was actually never written for children, but because it's animation, the assumption is that, of course, it's a kid's show. But it was never that. But part of the lightning in a bottle, I think, is that the dialogue is for grown-ups, but the images are so beautiful and colorful and really sort of uncomplicated, that kids really loved it too. And Bart is such a, you know, a Nimrod that you couldn't not laugh at his antics. And then Homer is so stupid sometimes. And so we got this cross, this mashup of fans that was quite unique. And of course, we're frozen in time. So, you know, Lisa Simpson's been 8 for 32 years. And every time, although we actually do an episode that will air season 32, where she turns 9.
Oh.
So she's 9 for about 4 minutes, because then the episode's over. And then she'll go back to being 8. But usually she's 8, and then she has a birthday, and she turns 8, and we just don't talk about that.
And it's interesting. I mean, you can't really do that, obviously, as an on-screen actor.
Right.
You age out of roles and things like that, which is something I thought was interesting that you said. I think it was a piece with GMA about, you know, not letting your idea of success kind of get in the way and cloud your success. Because I think you had planned on being really, you know, have this on-screen career, and you thought maybe this voiceover stuff would get in the way. And then here we are now, and it was this like happy kind of accident, which I think it's an incredible piece of advice. I think especially right now during this time, I think a lot of people, their careers are being maybe sidelined with what's going on, but I think it's a very valuable, you know, little piece of wisdom.
Thank you. I you know, it's a lesson learned the hard way. I'm bullheaded, stubborn. And I really, you know, the lesson, as so many, the best lessons do, I don't know why this has to be true. Maybe because human beings are sort of not that bright. I don't know. But it came out of really an enormous amount of pain, despite having this extraordinary success on The Simpsons and not being able to appreciate it because I was so focused on what I didn't have, right? I was so focused on, as you said, this really very, very vivid picture of what my success would look like on camera, and then had a really successful on-camera career for about the first 13 or so years of my career, and then it really started to drop off, and I couldn't make sense of it, and it caused me a lot of anguish, and I started to feel like a failure, despite the fact that The Simpsons continued to climb and climb and climb. But I also feel like, because of, you know, now thanks to the internet, there's this thing called digital permanence, so you sort of can't get away from horrible photos, can't get away from like quotes. And so people are like, well, Yardley, I used to really not like playing Lisa Simpson. I'm like, that's not quite accurate. I always loved my character, but there is, and still is actually, this kind of, there's a pejorative perception of doing voiceover. And if that's the bulk of your work, like, oh, you just do voiceover? As though it is somehow less, it requires less of your heart and soul to imbue your character, to make that character the most extraordinary it can be. And that's just not true. Just because my physicality is limited because I can't move off the microphone, I don't give any less to Lisa Simpson just because it's not my face, you see. So.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing, whether it's even performance capture in films or video game work. It's like, you know, as an actor, you are putting the everything into that. I mean, it's not just like recording like a narration for a commercial. It's you're
exactly
performing. Yeah.
It's everything. And it's, but I bought into that kind of, it's a sort of the ugly stepchild of the acting craft, you know? Yeah. And so, and it hurt me. It hurt me in many ways and robbed me of appreciating and getting to enjoy a lot of the incredible experiences that this job has brought me. And to your point, my God, I cannot, you know, every day, my gratitude mantra is thank you to The Simpsons, because we're able to keep working when, you know, in our country, 40 million people are unemployed. It is just, I recognize how lucky I am.
And a bit of a secret weapon, I think, too. It's got to be so fun to be somewhere and see some like kid with a Simpsons backpack on. Do you ever walk up and be like, "Hey, I'm Lisa Simpson"?
No, but I do walk up. I will sometimes, and I just to sort of gauge it, because there's also a thing about how old the child is. So if I've had so many encounters where the kid is like 4 or 5, and the parent goes, "Oh my God, it's Lisa Simpson!" And so I'm like, "Okay, sure, I'd love to meet your son or your daughter." And they say, "Do the voice, do the voice." And, "Hi, I'm Lisa Simpson." And the kid just looked at like, "What the? Who? You are not Lisa Simpson. You are not Lisa Simpson." Wow. And then you feel like the biggest ass. But I will sometimes go up to them and say, "Hey, I really like your backpack. Do you like The Simpsons?" And then sort of based on how engaged they are with their answer, I might sort of go down the road like, "Who's your favorite character?" "My favorite character is Lisa Simpson." And then sometimes if I do the voice, they kind of like, "Something's not right here. What is that? That sounds familiar." And then
it is bizarre, like seeing it in person, because that's such a familiar voice is coming out of you. It's like it kind of does trip up your brain a little bit. It's great. Your impression is spot on, I have to say.
Thanks. I really appreciate that, Tanner.
And you have done, we got to say, so much, on camera work as well. One of my favorites, Maximum Overdrive, which was, changed the way I took road trips growing up. It scared me deeply, but I thought before we go on to something else, play a little game called Roll Call. If I give you the project, can you remember the name of the character?
Probably not, but let's try.
Let's do a handful. Okay, let's start with that one. Maximum Overdrive. Do you remember who?
Connie.
Connie. Boom.
She'd say, "Curtis, are you dead?" Classic,
okay.
Classic.
Listen to me.
Oh, no idea. I think that was I went to Germany to shoot that.
Yeah, it's Coots. You played Coots.
Coots.
That's what it says according to the.
That's probably true.
Okay, Murphy Brown. Do you remember who you played on Murphy Brown?
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember I played Miles's girlfriend. Ah, crap.
Last name Kramer. Kramer? Phoebe?
Was it like Kitty Kramer?
Phoebe. It was Phoebe.
No, see.
Okay, you're gonna.
I'm gonna disappoint you a great deal, Tanner.
I think you'll get this one. City Slickers. Huh?
Because he says my name when I walk in.
It's also the name of one of your co-stars on The Simpsons.
Nancy.
Boom.
That's right.
Nailed it. One of my other favorites, We're Back. Do you remember who you played?
This actually came up on Twitter the other day, and is her name Cecilia or Celia?
Yeah.
Cecilia,
yeah. Nailed it.
Yeah.
You're doing
and
pretty
I
good.
Didn't get it. And they were just like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, listen, I can hardly remember yesterday or this morning. So.
and lastly, The Simpsons movie 2.
Oh, we're all hoping. And we get that question all the time. And I will say they don't, 2 things. One, when we did The Simpsons movie 1, it wasn't like there was a separate staff to go off and write The Simpsons and a separate set of animators. They basically heaped another full-time project onto the writers and the animators, and it was a weighty task. The second part is, I know they don't want to just put out a movie because, we could do a sequel, right? But my idea is we should do a Christmas movie as the next Simpsons movie, and then it will be this annual, everybody wants to watch it, throw it in there with the Grinch and Christmas Story and all those favorites. So that's my pitch.
Do you have a go-to Christmas movie, by the way? I feel like Home Alone is like the solid staple.
Yes. We in this country, actually, lots of people love Christmas Story. I love Christmas movies, and so I'll sort of search for them as it becomes that time, and then just get a big queue. I love the music of Christmas. I'm a big fan of Christmas, but I'm really not a big fan of the 26th. It feels like this huge letdown. Like, oh shit! Well, now it's over.
Gone. It's such a sad time, and the Hallmark Channel's business just crashes after that.
I know, right?
They're like, no, what are we gonna do?
Oh no! Well, thank God for Valentine's Day for the Hallmark Channel.
That is true. You've also been very busy too. Your podcast is amazing. Congrats on that. It's continuing to just grow and grow and grow. Over 17 million downloads of Small Town Dicks, which is a great title.
We use it as the noir slang for detective, right?
Yeah.
And Detective Dan came up with that name, which we thought was fantastic at the time, and we still love it. But sometimes I have actually done sort of some daytime news interviews, and they're like, yeah, we can't say the name of your podcast. I'm like, really? Anywho, thank you for
It's a great name.
it.
It's a great name, and it's a super fascinating podcast. And I think there's so many people that get so captivated by these true crime stories. What do you think it is about true crime that just really digs so deep in our brains?
It's a good question. I think it's sort of a multifold answer. I think people like the good guys to win. So they like, even though there's a really poignant and relevant conversation going on in this country about policing, American policing and police brutality, I think ultimately people, if the train derails, they want to know that there's another group of people that can put the train back on the tracks. And for us, by and large, that's law enforcement. If your house is burning down, it's the fire department. If you're sick, it's your doctor. So they want people who are willing to face these worst case scenarios and go, that's all right. This is what I do. I got this. So I think it's partly that. True crime also has a huge female audience.
Yeah.
Our female audience, I think, I read not long ago, is over 70% of our audience share. And I think part of that, there's a kind of voyeuristic quality for women because we're often the victims. And I think there's a kind of there, but for the grace of God go I. And so maybe I can learn something about what to do, what not to do. And there's sadly, I kind of can't look away, sort of, oh shit, what? Oh. So, but in our cases, and it's more unusual in the podcast space than on television, certainly, all of the cases are told by the detective who investigated the case.
Yeah.
So instead of a true crime, because it's such a popular genre, you get a lot of rehashing of the most famous crimes, whereas we concentrate on big time crime in small towns. And so these are often cases you haven't heard before. And you get a really brilliant, granular look at what it takes for detectives and law enforcement agencies to line up all the dominoes perfectly so that justice can be served. I cannot even tell you, before this, I had no idea how much detail had to be in place for a DA to even file. You might have all the evidence in the world and the DA still goes, yeah, no, I'm not going to file on that. So I really, we didn't start it as a podcast to shine a bright light on the good work that law enforcement is doing, but in this day and age, in these times here, certainly it's become a beacon of that, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing too, because you watch or you listen to the podcast and you hear these stories, and they're so fascinating and oddly like entertaining, and then it hits you when you're like, this really happened. It's not like it's a work of fiction. And that's a whole nother, mind right there, where you're like, oh my God, this really happened. And some people maybe in their backyard or down the street where they live. And sometimes ignorance is bliss in a way too. Maybe I don't want to know what they found in the bushes, like down by the creek. I mean, I'm good.
It's so true. I think people have asked me now that, so we were about to launch our 7th season on September 4th, but we do about 2 seasons a year. So we're 3 years old. And people ask me, how do you sleep at night anymore after hearing sort of the worst of humanity over and over again? So I edit the episodes. We have 2 actual editors, and then I edit and another producer edits. And only because sometimes we'll have a guest come on and sort of tell you who did it in the first 5 minutes. And you're like, great. Okay. I'm just going to move that back to like minute 18. I'm not going to change the story. I'm just going to rearrange the puzzle pieces a little. And so part of it is, so when I edit, it really switches to literally the other side of the brain, the more analytical side of the brain, because as I'm sure you know, when people listen to podcasts, I would say 99% of the time, you do not have their full attention. They're driving, they're walking the dog, they're cooking, they're gardening, they're maybe even talking to somebody else. So our job is to make sure that if you miss something, you're like, oh, wait, what? And you are still interested enough to want to rewind 10 seconds and go, oh, yeah, I wanted to pick that up. So that helps.
There could also be people out there committing true crimes while listening to true crime podcasts.
Well, Tanner, I never thought of that, but that is.
Never thought of.
That's sort of so meta.
Yeah,
meta.
That's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to I want to digress for a second and tell you I just read your really beautiful post about your wedding anniversary.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you've had loss. You don't mention what it is, but these are tough times as it is, and that was just a really beautiful thing you said.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was to do what I do now is I actually won a contest that got me on the big screen across Canada, and then in this past January I lost my gig, and then we went into a pandemic, and it just kind of like, and we had we relocated to Toronto. My wife gave up she was a teacher, gave up a contract and a stable position to like take a big risk. So it's been a wild ride, and all the traveling over the years, as you probably are well aware, to be away from your family. We actually met in San Diego.
At
Comic-Con.
Cake Pops.
So, yes, that's right. So, which was also awesome too, because there was that boat was like Kevin Smith and like Kelsey Grammer, and then I saw Yeardley walk by, and I was like, that's who I want to like go say hi to. That's amazing.
I remember, and I went up to Kelsey Grammer and said hello, and I had this thing where I always introduce myself, even if people are like, Yeardley, you wouldn't have to reintroduce yourself to Kelsey. I'm like, listen to me. The man is busy. I rarely see him. Like, he's one of those who often does his part separately. And so if you reintroduce yourself, you say, Kelsey, it's Yeardley Smith, from The Simpsons. And he says, I know. Then hooray, so much the better. And if he says hello, because he didn't quite remember, I help him out. It's all good. My feelings aren't hurt if, you don't remember me. It's all good. It's all good. We're good.
Well, I made sure to not every day a legend walks by on a yacht outside of Comic-Con. So we got to say hi. But thank you so much for saying that. That was so nice of you to say that.
Really enjoyed it.
It's been a wild ride these last couple of months, and we're trying to hope for the hope it all gets better in the next little while.
I know 2020 is really making a name for itself in all the worst ways.
Yeah, but you know what, we got that's why I'm doing this little series. It's to talk to people like yourself, and you've inspired so many people, and it's really cool to be able to connect with you. So I really appreciate that. But we do have a lot of fans that are watching. I know you guys have submitted fan questions, and they may have got lost when we had to restart. But resubmit your questions really quick, and we're going to get to a couple before we wrap up. So let's jump into this. Let me see. Let me pick one here. This is a great question here. Hey, Yeardley, tell me what future Lisa relationship do you think is most likely, Hugh or Milhouse? What do we?
Oh, Hugh, 100%. Are you kidding me? Listen, I just want to set the record straight for the 100th time. Lisa Simpson is never going to end up with Milhouse. That's not ever happening. Lisa Simpson will be happy and single before she rides off to the sunset with Milhouse.
I'm holding out for Ralph. He's the underdog here. Okay. Okay, this is another great, heavily debated question. Do the Simpsons have hair or not? I need to know. Is it hair or what's going on? Yes,
it is hair. I just heard a story about this. So I moderated the panel for the virtual Comic-Con this year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And David Silverman, who's one of our original animation directors, brilliant man, was on the panel, and he said there was a female animator who was drawing The Simpsons and didn't want to draw, like, the reason The Simpsons are yellow is because we were blonde. The children were blonde. And she didn't want to how do you do the line for the hairline? Like, what's the hairline? What if the skin color is the same as the hair? And Matt Groening really loved it, and that's how it is. But yes, we have hair.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a cool.
Well, and you can tell because, especially Bart, when sometimes on Sundays when he has to go to church and Marge parts his hair like a little guy.
True.
Once in a while, Lisa's hair is sort of all akimbo. So, yeah, it's a fair question, though.
It is a fair question. There's actually more than one person I've asked that question, so I'm going to point that out, too. Let's see. Where's another great question here? Okay. Let's see. I got a left or right. Let's go with this one. What is your most favorite Simpsons collectible out there? And were you aware they did fruit machines? I don't even know about that. But there are a lot of Simpsons merchandise and collectibles. Do you have a favorite? Do you own anything? Do you have stuff like that?
I have a few things. I was going to show you. I have actually a couple of things for show and tell. This was one of my favorite commemorative.
Oh, wow.
So it commemorates the 100th episode, and it's just a really beautiful embroidery job. Is that good?
Wow, that's beautiful.
That one's very cool. I was actually going to show you this is one of my favorites, so I found this little flying Lisa. And I remember, this was like 1990, and I remember I found them in a little shop on Hollywood Boulevard, and I bought them all, and there was maybe 15 of them. And then I went to Fox, and I said, do you have any more? And they said, no. And I was like, what do you mean? What? And so on my own, I secretly did a run of these little pins because I feel like they embody her spirit so beautifully. And so I still have a few left. Here's another funny thing, which is kind of terrible, but you won't actually really be able to see that this is a photo of an Emmy award, like the actual statue, glued to a keychain, and on the back, which you can't really see, it says 2011 Emmy nominee, The Simpsons, Outstanding Animated Program. This is what they gave us to commemorate that stunning event for being nominated in 2011. I actually have it taped, Scotch tape. That's how cheap it is, to my refrigerator.
Amazing.
It kills me. It's so funny. That's really very inside. Nobody's ever seen that before.
Wow, that's very cool. Well, thanks for showing us that stuff. We're going to do show and tell later, but we got it.
Oh, yeah.
We hit it. We hit it. No, it's okay. We hit it. That's great. You got some good stuff. Someone actually already asked in the comments about the cells in the background and the artwork. What are those real? Is that a real cell that's behind us there?
Oh, yes. So this room has cells floor to ceiling. You can see over there.
Wow.
And it's really the only thing from our show that I collect. I don't like a lot of stuff. I'm really when I say no gifts at Christmas or birthday, I actually mean that. It's not like, oh, it's okay, you can give me a gift. Like, no gifts. I don't need any more stuff. Like, who has the room for it? But the cells, first of all, everyone is an original, and they're so beautiful. The colors are so bright, and it's so unusual, as you know, to have a job for as long as I feel like I'm like a 1950s salesman for as long as I've had this job. When your father or your grandfather used to have a job his entire career, that's not our life in show business. So this is such an anomaly in so many ways, and these cells are such a massive part of my history. So for The Simpsons, every year they would give us 2 production cells, and then if you wanted more, you had to buy them. So I've spent a lot of money on cells, but I love them. Those
are cool. That's a good retirement plan if you.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I might need it.
Yeah.
You never know.
No, I think you're okay. It's on Disney Plus now. I'm sure we're all.
We're actually waiting. Season 32 is the last season of this contract. So, fingers and eyes crossed that they re-up in the fall or something.
Oh man, that would be. I don't even know what the world would implode if that happened. We can't imagine a world without that.
Agreed.
There's a couple more good questions here. This is one of my favorites right here. If Lisa ages with the show and, you know, turned 40 this season, what do you think she would be? What do you think she'd be doing?
She'd be president.
I agree. I think
Hell
that would
yeah.
be. Is it strange? It's also strange too, how many times, you know, The Simpsons has predicted the future at this point. Have you seen all the articles and things? And...
Yes.
Wow.
It is fantastic and funny, and I sort of joke that they have a crystal ball in the middle of the writer's table, and that's how they do it. But
is that how they do it? Okay.
yes. The flip side, of course, is that we've also made a lot of predictions that didn't come true. Of course, nobody talks about those. But if you've been on for 32 seasons, good God, I'd hope you get a few right? So, but I will say, some of them are so uncanny, like Trump becoming president. And recently, I guess, with the coronavirus, we had done an episode some time ago where there's a horror, you know, another, like a pandemic-like virus, that somehow that episode kind of reflected 2020 in odd ways. There are some things that
there were bees in that episode too. Yeah, there was, like, because the murder hornet showed up and there was bee. I think
yes,
bees.
that's right.
Yeah,
and also being able to predict the Super Bowl long before you even know which teams are in the playoffs. That does seem kind of, maybe it's a kind of collective consciousness thing. You know, that notion of at a certain point, all of our, since we're all made of the same stuff, the thought process moves all in the same general direction.
Yeah.
And weird things happen when that happens.
My theory is you guys are just all from the future. Is that
That's accurate? Probably. Now the cat's out of the bag, Tanner. Now
what is it like? What's the world like?
Well, what somebody told me about a meme or a cartoon, I guess, where Christopher Lloyd is putting Michael J. Fox into the DeLorean for, you know, Back to the Future. Yeah. And the little quote from Christopher Lloyd is, "Just don't set it for 2020. That's how I feel. That's what it's like to be to have arrived in the future.
Yeah, we should just rip out that page of the
history. A yet better future, to have come back and be like, you know, I think I might have got off at the wrong stop. Maybe.
Yeah, if I got out in 2020, I'd be like, yeah, I think we got to just hop. Yeah, I'd rather just stay in the time machine, as small as it is.
Yeah, just keep pull up, keep going. Don't even stop there. Don't even do it.
And lastly, let's hit on one more here. There was a great one. If you have a favorite Lisa line, there's been so many great quotable lines from this character. Do you have a favorite or a top three, maybe?
That's really tough. The sort of more specific, well, equally difficult question I get is, does Lisa have a catchphrase? And of course, we know she doesn't. There is the great episode where they go to the Itchy and Scratchy Land and she drinks the, you know, the contaminated water from our parody of It's a Small World. And she's, I am the Lizard Queen. That one's pretty good. I always love it when they take Lisa out of her comfort zone and make her do things that, A, she's not good at, things that she can't control because she is so organized. She is really kind of a control freak. So when she comes undone, there's great empathy there. Actually, there's great kind of like, oh my God, she is like us. There's there's a wonderful identifying moments where I think the fans, it really endears her to the fans, because nobody wants to be friends with a know-it-all who's perfect all the time. It's just like, that ain't fun. And I personally, I don't like the episodes where Lisa, they just use her to put her on a soapbox. They really, really rarely do it. But once in a while, it just becomes Lisa's 8, and the success of that character is, yes, she's super, super smart. She's a prodigy on the saxophone and all these things, but she never loses her love of Itchy and Scratchy as well. Yeah. So if you don't have that sort of, those opposites, that dichotomy, then the character doesn't succeed.
And I saw Kelsey at the comment at the bottom. Anytime she swoons over someone, it's the best too.
Sweet. Yeah.
Her swooning is so beautiful. She's so cute.
She is so cute.
And thank you so much for, bringing so much heart and soul into this character for all these years and inspiring so many people. And I feel like Lisa is such a great, iconic character, and she's such a role model too. I think she's really changed people's lives, which has got to be interesting to think about, that you've had some, part in maybe shaping people's futures, or maybe people played the saxophone because Lisa Simpson did.
Yes, I do hear that. I hear that from both people who play the saxophone and parents who have younger kids who say, my daughter plays the saxophone because of Lisa Simpson. I'm always deeply humbled by people who come up to me and say, Lisa has gotten me through so many hard times. I really identified with Lisa growing up. She means a lot to a lot of people, and I never ever take that for granted or take it lightly. It's just one of those. It's certainly, as we all say, it's never why you do the job, but as a sort of cherry on top, it's a pretty good cherry.
Yeah, someone commented saying Lisa made me feel okay about being smart and loving school, and now I have 3 degrees and I'm a teacher. So
what? I mean,
yeah.
God, I mean, really, Tanner, it doesn't get better than that. When the thing that you do that you love to do can have that kind of extraordinary effect on a complete stranger. I don't know. I can't put words to that.
Yeah, not only Lisa Simpson for you, just all the things that you've done and brought to the world too, and even your GMA interview and the wisdom that we pulled from that. I feel like the world is such a better place, with you on it, Yeardley. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who watched our little live stream and answering or asking so many great questions and commenting along. Thank you to everybody from all over the world. I saw there were people in Portugal and Spain and everywhere, so that's amazing. But thank you again, Yeardley. We can listen to your podcast, Small Town Dicks. Can you climb into the charts? 17 million plus downloads. And what's next for you? Is there anything on the bucket list that you want to do yet? Or
yes, I would love to. I was on Broadway very, very early on in my career, when I was 20 years old, and I would love to go back. I love theater. It's where I started. I love that. I love the sort of fly by the seat of your pants. You better, if you get in a jam, there's no cut. Okay, let's do that again. It's a skill, I feel, and a sort of measure of your fortitude that is that I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie that way. So I'd love to do that. Sadly, Broadway is shuttered, at least maybe till the end of the year, but I'm hopeful it will come back at some point. And but I have a production company, or rather a development company called Paperclip Limited that is actually quite busy. And our slate is really diverse. We have animated shows we're developing. We hardly develop anything for me to act in. I feel like maybe this year would sort of write that a little bit, but that isn't why I started it. I love good stories, and I believe everybody has a story, and especially people who feel like, my story's not that interesting. You're wrong. You're wrong.
That's it.
People really want to connect to anything. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like, there is a place I belong. They want to see themselves reflected in everywhere in the world. And actually, we're just releasing, it's in festivals now, a film called Gossamer Folds.
Yeah, somebody actually asked in the comments. I was going to come back to that. Yeah, what's the
And
status?
so it's a wonderful story, really just about this really lovely, unexpected friendship between a 10-year-old boy and his new neighbor, this African-American trans woman who lives with her dad. And, Tate, who's a little boy, his father, part of the message is hate is taught. And so Tate's father is a bigot, and that's reflected in the film. But Tate, when he meets Gossamer, and she's funny and engaging and empathic and turns out to be a really good friend to him in this new situation where he doesn't know anyone because they just moved there, decides, of course, that he will not follow in his father's footsteps. He will not judge the book by its cover. And so, but I was just watching Disclosure a couple of weeks ago, which is the Netflix documentary about trans representation, mostly in the media. And you know, it is what so many people of color have said. Anybody who basically isn't a white person, where Hollywood, you know, Oscars So White, that trended several years ago, where they feel as though trans representation in the media is not whole. It's not full. They're always playing hookers and people who die and these down and outs, right? And so there is a great push now, and as it should be, that can't just trans people, let's represent them as just people, just human beings. And so, as I say, I'm a big proponent of all the stories. I love all the stories. And the reason I wanted to do Gossamer Folds was because it's just a great story about a friendship, about two people who don't fit in their own environments, and they find a place to belong with each other. I don't know if you can hear my cat who's meowing outside the door going, why is the door closed? Oh my God!
That's so great. Yeah, it's, you know, I think it's about time that we give voices to these stories that I think have been ignored for so long. And I think we are seeing, you know, the start of something great right now with what's going on, and, you know, whether it's Black Lives Matter, and it's great that people are having these conversations, and there's maybe a bigger audience for these stories now. So hopefully we can keep telling them.
I agree. Before we sign off, I wanted to, because I was like, oh my God, what can I show Tanner that people haven't seen before? So I did a movie just actually before I did Maximum Overdrive called The Legend of Billie Jean.
Okay.
And Helen Slater was in it. Christian Slater was in it. They played actually brother and sister, although they're not related.
Right.
And it's now this huge, it's a cult classic, just like Maximum Overdrive. It was a bomb when it came out in 1985. And but at that time, literally, cable television was just sort of coming online. And so they needed content. So I'm not kidding. The Legend of Billie Jean ran 24/7 for would be like 6 weeks in a row. So anyway, it was one of my first films. It was my second movie. Here's me.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I had really long hair down to my waist. I was playing a 12-year-old, 13 maybe, and I was 20. But I don't know if you can see. So I'm talking to my stuffed bear that my character took everywhere. And I remember when we were setting up this interview, my publicist said, oh, you know, people show off things that they took from shows and movies and stuff. Yeah. So I kept the bear.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And he still has fake dirt, you know, when on a set when they like need to make something look aged. They aged the bear. And so he's still covered in faux soot. So
wow.
I love the bear.
Well, that has been probably the most impressive at-home show and tell that we've had. All the keychain and the cells and the bear. Gee, I feel like we've got a tour of the place at this point.
Very kind.
Well, thank you so much, Yeardley. It was so good to finally do this and stick with the Simpsons thing. I feel like it's going to take off.
You think so? All right.
I think
I'm going to tell him you said so, and so I'll hang in. I don't know. We'll see.
Wow, 32. Well, going on 32 seasons. That's that's incredible. But
it's so long. Thank you so much for having me. I you know, best of luck. I just feel like I really do feel, and it's hard to hear when, you know, it's happening to you and you're like, okay, I'll remember that. But I really do feel as though, even though things kind of crashed in January, that wonderful things are in store for you in the future. I really, really do.
Well, thank you.
Just stay the course. You'll be fine. It'll be all right.
Well, thank you. I'm going to continue on. So we'll, and hopefully our paths will cross maybe
I would love it.
On a yacht in the future.
Yes, right. With more cake.
All right. Yeardley Smith, everybody. You can check out her podcast, and continued success to you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.